Princess Beatrice was born on August 8, 1988. She's the daughter of Prince Andrew and Sarah, the Duchess of York, which means she's the granddaughter of the late Queen Elizabeth II. How cool is that? Beatrice has a younger sister named Princess Eugenie, and when they were little, they often wore matching outfits. Can you imagine having a princess as your sister? Even though Beatrice is a princess, she went to school just like you do, but her schools were extra fancy. She studied at places like Upton House School in Windsor and St. George's School in Ascot. These aren't regular schools. They're where many rich and important people send their kids. Beatrice didn't stop at regular school either. She went to university too. She studied history at Goldsmiths, University of London, and was the first person in her royal family to finish a full university degree. That's pretty impressive for a princess. Now let's talk about where Princess Beatrice lives. Hold on to your hats because it's pretty amazing. Beatrice and her family live in a huge, beautiful house in the countryside. It's called a farmhouse, but it's not like any farm you've ever seen. This house has 6 bedrooms. That's a lot of space. It also has a big swimming pool, tennis courts, and even a special building just for guests. To keep them safe, there's a big security gate around the property. But that's not all. They also have an apartment in a real palace in London called St. James's Palace. Can you imagine having 2 homes and one of them is in a palace? Princess Beatrice is super rich. She and her sister have about £3.6 million together. That's a ton of money. Some of it comes from special savings accounts called trust funds. But guess what? Beatrice also has a real job. She works as a vice president at a company called Affinity. Even though she's a princess, she works hard just like other grown-ups. Now let's talk about the fun stuff, like what Princess Beatrice wears. She loves fancy clothes and often wears dresses made by famous designers like Alexander McQueen, Valentino, and Dolce & Gabbana. These dresses can cost thousands of pounds each. She also loves to wear fancy hats called fascinators. Once she wore a very unusual hat to her cousin Prince William's wedding. It looked a bit like a pretzel, and everyone talked about it. Being a princess means going to lots of fancy parties and events. Beatrice gets to attend royal weddings, special ceremonies at Buckingham Palace, fancy horse races like Royal Ascot, and even movie premieres with famous actors. Can you imagine walking down a red carpet next to your favorite movie star? Beatrice also gets to travel all around the world. She's been to many countries for both work and fun. When she travels, she often stays in the fanciest hotels or on luxury yachts. Imagine going on vacation and sleeping in a room that's bigger than some people's whole houses. One of the coolest things about being a princess is that Beatrice has some very famous friends. She hangs out with celebrities, models, and other royals from around the world. Imagine having a sleepover with a movie star or a prince from another country. When Beatrice got married, it was a big deal. She wore a beautiful dress that once belonged to her grandmother, Queen Elizabeth. She also wore a special tiara that the Queen had worn on her own wedding day. How many people get to wear a real Queen's tiara? Not many, that's for sure. Even with all her fancy things and important friends, Princess Beatrice spends a lot of time helping others. She works with many charities that do good things for people. She's even run in a marathon to raise money for charity. Beatrice enjoys some fancy hobbies too. She likes skiing in expensive ski resorts, going to big music festivals, watching tennis at Wimbledon from the royal box, and riding horses. The royal family really loves horses, and Beatrice is no exception. How do you think a princess gets around? Beatrice has been seen in fancy cars like Range Rovers and BMWs. For long trips, she might take a private jet, and for quick journeys, she might use a helicopter. When she's on vacation near the sea, she might travel on a luxury yacht. It's a far cry from riding the school bus or your parents' car. When it's Beatrice's birthday or a holiday, the celebrations are extra special. She might have parties in palaces or castles. Can you imagine blowing out your birthday candles in a room that's hundreds of years old? Her cakes are probably made by the best pastry chefs in the world, and her presents are likely things that most people could only dream of. Being a princess means always being protected. Beatrice has security guards who keep her safe wherever she goes. It's like having your own superhero team. These guards make sure she's safe when she's out in public or traveling. Beatrice gets some special treats because she's a princess. For example, she gets to sit in special seats at big events. She can visit parts of palaces and castles that are closed to regular people. How cool would it be to explore secret rooms in a castle? She also gets invited to meet important people like presidents and movie stars. Even with all these fancy things, Beatrice loves spending time with her family. She has a husband named Edoardo and a little girl named Sienna Elizabeth. They do things together like having picnics in the beautiful gardens of palaces, going on family vacations to amazing places, and celebrating holidays with the whole royal family. Even princesses need family time. Now, let's talk about some of the crazy, expensive things in Beatrice's life. Remember that farmhouse we talked about earlier? Well, it cost about £3.5 million. That's almost as much as all the money Beatrice and Eugenie have together. The dresses she wears to special events can cost thousands of pounds each. Even her everyday clothes are probably more expensive than most people's fancy outfits. When Beatrice travels, she doesn't just stay in regular hotel rooms. She might stay in the presidential suite of a 5-star hotel, which can cost thousands of pounds per night. Or she might rent a whole villa on a private island. Imagine having a whole island to yourself for a vacation. The cars Beatrice rides in aren't just any cars. They're often bulletproof and have special features to keep her safe. These cars can cost hundreds of thousands of pounds each, and when she flies on a private jet, it's not like buying a regular plane ticket. Private jets can cost thousands of pounds per hour to use. Even the food Beatrice eats is probably fancier than what most of us have. She might eat at restaurants where a single meal costs more than some families spend on food in a whole week. And at home, she probably has chefs who cook special meals just for her and her family. The jewelry Beatrice wears is also incredibly valuable. Remember that tiara she wore at her wedding? Royal tiaras can be worth millions of pounds. Even her everyday jewelry is probably worth more than most people's cars. When Beatrice goes to work, she's not sitting in a regular office. The company she works for, Affinity, probably has a very fancy office with expensive furniture and the latest technology. And when she does charity work, she might fly around the world to visit the places and people her charities are helping.